don't try to sell. You don't like being sold. I don't like when somebody tries to sell me. Just turn the light on. And if what you have is legitimate, truly legitimate, then turn the light on. And the people that want it will get it. And the people that aren't interested won't. Never worry about, don't chase after anybody.
Hey there, and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you haven't met me before, I'm your host, Sam Hind, and I'm so honored that you chose to join me here today. I'm here to help you grow your direct selling business, no matter where you are in this journey, whether you're at the very beginning, whether maybe you're even just considering starting a business in this space, or whether you've been doing it for many years and you're looking for some new tips, skills, and tricks to help you along on the way. I have the absolute honor and privilege of meeting some of the most powerful people around the world who have not only made businesses in this space, but are the forerunners and, of course, some very knowledgeable and wise people that can help us to have a greater impact and, of course, a greater ripple effect all around the world. I know that when you show up every day in your business, no matter whether you're talking to one person or 100 people, you are having a really powerful impact. And the guest that I'm going to be bringing in today is somebody who I had the absolute honor and privilege of meeting just over, I'm going to say it was actually nearly 2 years ago, because I can tell you this now. I couldn't say this back then, but the day that I met this man, I actually had just found out I was pregnant with little Addie, who I know many of our beautiful listeners have met on this podcast. She has absolutely already featured on here at just 8 months of age. But I had just found out the day before I met this amazing person that I was pregnant. I was in Utah. I was over there speaking at the Direct Selling conference, and I got the opportunity to meet this person almost completely by accident. And as I sat down and chatted with this amazing man for what I thought was going to be a 1 hour meeting, I found myself 6 hours later walking away, having had, met his family, got to know their company so much better, and of course heard some incredible stories. This is somebody who is not only, a founder of an incredible direct selling company, but they've also got a wealth of experience when it comes to marketing and selling. This person also is so passionate about this direct selling industry and the heart that he has to see people grow and develop and reach their full potential is so touching. And I know even just in this podcast episode, I could see just how emotional and passionate he was about everything that he did. So today I get to introduce you to the amazing Stephen K. Scott. Now, Stephen Scott is not only the founder of Biotech Nutritional Sciences, also known as Neumi, and co-founder of the American Telecast Corporation, but he is also the New York Times best-selling author of no less than 15 books. I have absolutely loved learning from the amazing Steve. And I know you're going to love hearing from him in this episode today as well. So if you're growing a business in this space, you want to hear and learn just a little bit more about how you can finesse your sales skills from, I'm going to call him the infomercial king himself, the man who learned by doing the hard yards. And literally you'll hear his story on this podcast, by going through those hard yards, by walking the hard road, how to make $1 million business fly, how to sell to people, how to reach people and connect with them on a real level that actually works and converts leads and sales. You're gonna love this. So if you want to know, how can I generate more leads for my business? How can I sell to more people? But how can I also make sure that I'm doing it with heart and with grace, and of course, grow my business? Then this is absolutely the episode for you. So grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, sit back and relax and enjoy the interview I had with the amazing Steve Scott. Well, welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I am so excited to have you with me here, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us. Steve, the founder of Neumi. I've been looking forward to this chat for ages. It's so great to have you.
Well, it's so nice to be here, and especially with the time difference, thank you for accommodating me.
Oh, look, I think it's so wonderful that we have got this amazing technology at our fingertips. And I feel very blessed that I get the chance to be able to connect with you and share this conversation with our listeners from all the way across the globe. You guys are in Utah, is that right?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Awesome. And you are on, I'm going to say, completely opposite seasons to us. We're at like below freezing temperatures right now. It's your
We're in the
summer.
summer. We're in the summer, and it hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit this week. So
Wow.
it's not bad. It's not humid where we are, so 100 degrees isn't really that bad.
Yeah, a little bit jealous, I've got to admit. We had a hailstorm here yesterday that literally shredded the trees. So it's very, very, very opposite. But great to be connecting with you today. Now, Steve, we had the opportunity to meet with you in person when we were in Utah. Now we're going to do this calculation. It's a bit over a year ago because I was pregnant and Addie is now 7 months old. So this was what, about a year and a half ago now.
Mhm.
And you were just such an interesting person to chat to. You got such an incredible business history is probably the best way to put this. And I'm excited for you to share a bit of that today because I know that Greg and I walked away from our conversation just going, wow, we've just in the space of a few hours, we've learned so much from you and your amazing family. And I'm excited to hear a bit more about that today. But do you want to share with us a little bit about who you are and what that background is for you? You're the founder of Neumi, which is a direct selling company right now that many people are probably familiar with. We will tell them a little bit about that as well. But how about you just share a little bit about, who is Steve Scott?
Yeah, Steve Scott graduated from college in 1970 with a degree in marketing from Arizona State University, and tried to get a job. Nobody wanted to hire a guy without experience. And in the first 6 years after college, I went through 9 jobs. I was fired many times. Many times I quit right before I was going to be fired, and because it always looks better on a resume. But on job number 10, I started a little company with a partner. He had $5,000. I had an idea. And 5 months later, our sales hit $1 million a week. And in 1976, $1 million a week was a lot of money because gasoline was only 38 cents a gallon, and new cars were $12,000 to $15,000. But God really blessed our business. And over the next 35 years in that business, we had a plethora of companies in different industries. We had 93 celebrities under contract, including celebrities like Charlton Heston, Tom Selleck, Michael Landon, Kenny Rogers, Cher, Jane Fonda, Burt Reynolds.
I can see, I know you're looking at your wall and I know why.
Yeah,
Because out there
they,
you've got photos of you with all of these celebrities. It's like this just
yeah,
amazing. Sorry. I could see your eyes going over there. I was
yeah,
like,
I
I
was. I'm
remember
looking
this.
here. We'll do it. Have some fun there. That
Yeah,
that's
look, see, we're not lying.
that's 17 of our 93 celebrities.
I love it.
But those are the ones that I really, some you really enjoy, some you don't enjoy. Uh, Most of
A
them I
podcast for
enjoy.
another day.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
by the time I retired, we had done billions of dollars in sales. The project we're best known for, because it's been on the air now for 28 years here in the United States, every week in every market, is Total Gym with Chuck Norris and Christy Brinkley. And that was a real blessing for us and for millions of people. We became the number one piece of resistance training, strength training equipment in the world. About 35,000 people in the United States, or 35 million rather, are rehabbed on Total Gym every year. It's a piece of rehab equipment in over 35,000 facilities. And but in 2006, I met a scientist from the Mayo Clinic, and he introduced me to a word, And that word changed my life, changed the whole direction of my life. And that word was a little tiny molecule called glutathione. And he gave me a vision for it. He said, if anybody could ever effectively, and that's the key word, effectively and efficiently deliver it into the cytoplasm of the cell, that he said, you'd change life on Earth. Well, I've spent 17 years and millions of dollars of my own money to get to build a technology that now does that. And the result is we're seeing things nobody ever imagined. We're seeing it in human performance, world records, athletes. We have many professional and world-class amateur athletes on the products, and they're breaking their own records as well as world records. But we're also seeing tremendous things happen in every aspect of human life, performance, health. It's amazing. And everything that scientist said could happen if is now happening. And that's kind of what drives me. I'll be 76 in a few weeks. I retired at 69 for 6 weeks, and then a scientist came to me and said, what if? What if I could get the particle size so small? And he gave me the range in nanometers. If I could get it down to that, what would you say? And I said, well, you do that, and we're going to change life on Earth. We're going to save lives all over the world, and we're going to help people. So that's what I'm doing now. I wrote my first book, which I love writing books, in 1996. It's the only book Donald Trump ever endorsed, but he hadn't gone into politics yet. He was a businessman, and he said Steve Scott's strategies are so he said his uncanny insights and strategies are so simple and easy to apply. I believe they could empower anyone from a college student to the small owner of a small business to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company to achieve levels of success they haven't yet dreamed of. And that's my favorite part of his quote. People dream within a box. Mm-hmm. This is their box. Now, that box is formed throughout their life. It's formed by their teachers, by their peers, by their friends, by their coaches, and they stay confined to that box their whole life. When I got out of college, I was in that box. But thankfully, a man got me into the book of Proverbs. I flunked out of so many jobs. After I lost my fifth job, my best friend and mentor, a guy named Gary Smalley, said, he was visiting me from Chicago, and I said, Gary, I don't understand it. I'm not stupid. I have a good IQ. I'm not lazy. I'm first in, last out at every company I work for, and I understand my craft, which is marketing, but I can't succeed, and I don't know why. And he said, well, let me pray about it. And the next morning he comes into our little living room and says, I got the answer. I said, what's the answer? And he said, how would you like to be wiser than all of your bosses? And I was 26 years old. And I said, yeah, right. And he said, no, there's something you can do. Do it for 2 years. In 2 years, you'll be wiser than all your bosses. In 5 years, you'll probably be a millionaire. At the time, I didn't even have money for breakfast. 2 ladies from a Bible study I taught had anonymously left groceries on the doorstep. That's the only reason Gary and I could eat that day. And I said, okay, what do I do? And he told me, and he was wrong. I wasn't a millionaire in 5 years. I was a multimillionaire in 2.5 years. That was the power of what had happened. And I can't take credit for it. I found he challenged me to spend every day for 2 years reading a chapter of Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, every day. And so today is the 26th, so I would read Proverbs chapter 26. And he said, pencil and paper in hand, write down the wisdom and insights you gain, and begin to apply those to your business as soon as you can.
Yep.
And by job number 9, I had found 15 strategies that blow up that box, destroy the box. And they were incredible. Like Donald Trump said, they could empower anyone to achieve levels of success they haven't yet dreamed of. And that's what started happening with me as a peon, the smallest place in the organization of a huge catalog company. Job number 9, I doubled their sales in 4.5 months from 30 million to 60 million using these strategies. So with that, another man that was 52, I was 27, said, hey, if you could find a product you and I could sell on TV, you could quit your job at Ambassador, move back to Philly, and we could start our own TV marketing company. And that was back in 1976. And out of that came billions and billions of dollars in sales that funded my ministry, funded our employees, funded a lot of things, including
Amazing.
our research and development of what we have now.
Yep. So amazing. And this story you cover in depth in one of your books, which is The Richest Man on Earth. And that is, of course, the story of Solomon and the Proverbs. And you talk in that book extensively about your experience of reading Proverbs and how each of those things applied to your life. And Greg and I have thoroughly enjoyed reading that. I highly recommend any of our listeners to check that out. I want to just come back to what that looked like for you as a turnaround, because this was job number 9. You moved into job number 10, which really wasn't a job because you started your own business at that point.
Tiny business. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the base, I've been on Larry King. Larry King did an interview with me that on that book. It's The Richest Man Who Ever Lived, not on earth, but The Richest Man Who Ever Lived. And before we did the interview, we were in the studio, and he said, "Of your 15 strategies, which one's the most important?" And I said,
"This
"Larry,
is one of my questions today."
they're all important, but one's more powerful than all the others." And he said, "Okay, tell me what that one is." And I said, "Well, you're living proof of it." And that is effective partnering.
Mm-hmm.
Effective partnering takes the ceiling off of opportunity. So there is no ceiling when you effectively partner. Ineffective partnering, which is most partnerships, 90% of all partnerships fail because the people ineffectively partner. So ineffective partnering accelerates failure, while effective partnering takes the lid off of opportunity. I never expected to make, at the time that I started in Proverbs, I was making half of the average wage earner's income in America. And by the time I retired from American Telecast, I'd been making millions of dollars a year, every year for decades. And it's the difference are these strategies, but effective partnering is by far the most powerful because it takes you out of your own resources. You don't have to have money if your partner has money. You don't have to have an education if your partner has the education that's needed. You don't have to let lack of time determine what you get done in a day if you partner with people that you can delegate responsibilities to effectively. So now every person that you add to that, you're delegating. And I learned how to, in the time that it would take other people's to produce one show, which typically is 18 months, I'd produce at least 20 to 30. And I'd be writing some, have some in pre-production, have some in production, some in post-production, all simultaneously because I had everything. I use a process that I teach in Proverbs called, in Richest Man, called vision mapping. And that's something less than 1% of the population does, but the people that vision map achieve a lot more in less time than anybody else on earth do. And so it's a very important skill set that's easily learned. My kids learned it. My one son went from being ranked 20th in the nation in high jump to being national champion in 9 months. And part of that was the vision map that his coach put together. And vision mapping is a very, very important discipline. Very few people do it, but it's very simple. It's just putting a Google map to your life. That's all.
So, would you take a moment to share with us just briefly what vision mapping might look like?
Sure. Like a Google map, people think vision is mystical. It isn't. A vision is an abstract art that has no beginning, no ending. A vision is a roadmap. There's a destination, there's a current location, there's multiple ways to get there. Some take a long time and they're nice and scenic, others are very fast. And so, what you do first, you have to know what you want. Most people don't even know what they want. I used to speak at big Amway meetings, and afterwards I'd sign books. This was in '96, and people come up to me and I'd say, "What's your dream? What's your vision?" Well, I want to get rich, or I want financial independence. No, those. I mean, excuse me, those are as tangible as a cloud. I've flown through clouds. Clouds don't stop you from going up, and they certainly don't stop you from going down. And that a vision is a concrete. It's a roadmap. You've got to have a clear understanding of what your destination is. And you don't have to have a destination for 5 years from now. You can start with that, but you want a destination for how you're going to spend the next 24 hours, how you're going to spend the next week, the next 5 weeks, the next year. And so vision mapping shows you how to do it. So you start with a destination and you start with your current location, just like a Google map. Okay. Now you're going to have to take the right roads. So you start with a vision, then you break that vision into intermediate goals. So there might be 5 goals that have to be accomplished for you to achieve that vision. You then take each goal and you break those into specific steps that have to be taken to achieve each goals. And if a step is complex, more than one task, then you go ahead and you put the tasks that have to be accomplished to take the step. Mm-hmm. And so if a goal has 7 steps, you have to do that for the 7 steps. And then you begin to act on it. Now, you also have to put a timing to it. And people says, "Oh, that'll take me so long. It's a hard." No, hey, guess what? It accelerates achievement. It doesn't slow it down. All of a sudden, you know where you're going. You know what you have to get accomplished in a day. You know what you have to get accomplished in a week, in a month. And if you've got 6 months to complete a project and you want to complete it in 3 and move on to the next project, vision mapping is the only way to do that. Mm-hmm. Now, in the book, Richest Man Who Ever Lived, chapter 2 is the one that's made it a worldwide bestseller. It's in 50 languages. And it's Random House, which is the largest publisher in the world, told me it'll never go paperback because they consider it a classic. But this chapter 2 is on diligence. Proverbs says, "Do you see a man diligent in his business? He will stand, not kneel, stand before kings." In other words, the kings will seek his advice and his wisdom. If he's diligent, people say, "Well, I work hard." Well, that's not diligent. I'm sorry. Diligence has 8 component parts. And if any one of those are missing, you're not diligent on that project or in that area of your life. I was very diligent as a businessman and as a television writer, director, and producer. I was not diligent in my relationship with my wife. And so I didn't see near the results that I could have seen as far as being a better husband, being a better father, because I wasn't diligent in that area. I'm more diligent now. Who was my partner in that? Well, it was Gary Smalley, who was my mentor, and he was the #1 expert in the world on relationships. I did not have the knowledge I needed. Gary had all the knowledge I needed. Once again, effective partnering. So I studied over 200 people who had achieved impossible dreams, going clear back to pre-revolution in America, all the way through the Industrial Revolution, all the way through the information age. Nobody did it without effective partnering. Not one. How about Bill Gates? Well, Bill Gates had Steve Ballmer. He also had Paul Allen. How about Walt Disney? He had Roy Disney and UBI Works. Without UBI Works, there'd be no Mickey Mouse. So everybody that has achieved anything significant, Jesus chose to partner with his disciples, but he also partnered with the Holy Spirit and his Father. He lived to please his Father. That was his driving force. So we start even before you have a vision. What's your why? Why? You see, I have a purpose to people say, how can a 75-year-old travel all over the world, speak all over the world, preach 3 services in a church, and build a business at the same time and not get exhausted? And the answer is, I'm purpose driven. Mm-hmm. I have a purpose for what I do. Yep. Without that purpose, I'd burn out so fast, but I have a purpose.
Yep.
And in my case, I teach people how to build a legacy business, one that will not only affect you and your life, but more importantly, affect generations
Yep.
of other people's lives.
I love that.
Jesus, who is my number one love in life. I can't even express my love for him because he loves me trillion times more than I've ever expressed to him. But he said, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul?
Mm-hmm.
So he had a purpose for everything he did. God the Father sent him to earth to accomplish 27 missions. He accomplished all 27 while he was on the earth. And he's given me missions to accomplish in my lifetime. And one of them is in my vocation. I have a chance to, we have thousands of doctors that now are really, for lack of a better word, evangelists for what we have because they've seen the benefits.
I love that. And so, Steve, I want to come back to partnering for a little moment because many of our listeners are amazing solopreneurs. They're people who have a direct selling business, whether it's in network marketing or party plans somewhere around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
And for many of them, they're probably wondering right now, well, partnering doesn't really make sense for my business, but partnering doesn't necessarily mean a business partner, does it? I mean,
No,
you're also
no.
talking mentor, you're talking somebody that can hold you accountable, right?
What do you think the number one problem in business is? Take a
What do I
guess.
think? I would say it would be burnout, and I'd say it'd be burnout and health. I'm
No.
probably wrong here, but
Yes, you are. Not because of me, but because I know what the statistics are. What's the number one problem in marriage? This should be a little easier for you.
what's the number one people give up too
Okay, but
soon.
why did they give up? You want it? What's the underlying problem? It's
Yeah.
communication. Communication. Okay, we are terrible communicators. If
We
you're
are.
male or female, that alone creates a whole different system of communication. Women,
Yep.
90% of all women are right brain dominant, which means
Oh, sorry. I
they,
thought you were just going to stop with right. Okay. No.
no, right? Yeah, they are right more
Yeah.
often than they're wrong. If I listened to my wife, I would have tens of millions of dollars in the bank that I don't have because every bad decision I ever made, she had advised me beforehand, don't do that. I didn't
Interesting.
listen.
She sounds like
See,
a very
bad
wise woman.
communication.
Mm,
Effective communication is when you are able to share your mind or your heart in a way that the other person not only understands what you're
mhm,
saying, but all of a sudden they feel what you're feeling.
mhm,
Now, Gary Smalley was the best communicator I've ever known. I put him above Billy Graham. I put him above Bill Gothard. I put him above any politician by a million miles.
mm,
And what Gary would tell you is all you need to be a great communicator. I generated 40 million phone calls in my television days in response to my commercials advertising one of our company's products. And because Gary had taught me 4 communication techniques, not 400, just 4. But one of those, and only one, is the only one that bridges the gap between the right brain of a woman and the left brain of a man.
mhm.
And so I always made sure, because 72% of all my buyers over the years, millions of buyers, were female, and I'm a man. So if I can't use their language to not only give them understanding here, but let them feel what I'm trying to communicate,
Yep.
I wouldn't have succeeded. And so, same thing in a marriage. So, communication is number one problem in marriage, number one problem in parenting, number one problem in business. So, a person that says, well, partnering makes no sense in my business, they simply don't know what partnering is. See,
Mhm.
I partnered with the number one communicator on the planet. Everybody on this podcast can partner with him by picking up one of his books. Now,
Yep.
he's no longer alive, and but his books shared these techniques. My books share because I'm a reflection of my mentor. I have nothing original in me, but I teach his same communicate. How do you grab somebody's undivided attention? There's one technique. It's called salting. Or hooking rather. You hook like a fish. You throw a hook out. He's going this way. He bites the hook. Now he's going wherever the fisherman wants him to go. How do you keep a person's attention level high? A woman has an attention level that lasts for about 5 to 7 minutes. A man has, and men and children have one that's between 30 and 60 seconds. So their attention their attention span, they're going to fade. Well, don't panic, because there's one technique you can use to bring the attention span back up anytime you have an important critical point to make.
Mm-hmm.
That's called salting. So we show you how to salt. Now you want to communicate. If you're trying to persuade, I tell my people, and I've always had this attitude, my goal isn't to manipulate, it's not to persuade, and it's not to sell. But I've sold more goods on TV than anybody in history. Okay. How did I do it? Because I know my viewer, and because I listen to their objections, their excuses, their reasons. How do I do that? I call people that I think are in my target market. I read a script to them. Would you order from this? And if they say, no, why not? Well, you didn't tell me how this, and you didn't tell me that. Okay, so then I rewrite a script and I get them to them. But I listen. Listening, the most important part of communication is listening.
Yep.
And but the problem is people don't communicate in a way. You say something to your husband and it means one thing that's completely different than it means to you. Now, the way you solve that is with this one communication technique that bridges the right brain with the left brain, and that's called emotional word pictures, because pictures create a feeling. I saw my daughter the other day in her wedding dress. She's getting married the first week in September,
Oh, that's
and
so exciting.
oh, needless to say, they handed me
It's
a
very
box.
different to see a son get married to a daughter, right?
Box of Kleenex,
Yeah.
and but now that will be a picture. If somebody said, "Remember how you felt when you saw
Yeah.
Hallie in her wedding dress the first time," and I can instantly say, "Oh man, do I remember that?" Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's how such and such is making me feel right now. That's a good thing. If they say, remember how you felt when you got fired from job number 3, where your boss, a marketing guru, said, Steve, you're the single greatest disappointment in my entire career. You will never succeed in marketing. You have 20 minutes to clean out your desk. I can remember that room perfectly. It is
Mm-hmm.
burned into my mind. I see him in his gray suit sitting on the corner of his desk, kind of smirking as he said that to me, and me thinking, I got to tell my wife I failed again. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have money for next month's rent. I've done it again. I'm going through all this and this guy's smirking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have to get out and collect everything in my desk and put it in a paper bag in front of all the other employees that are in that room.
Mm-hmm.
That was humiliating. So if I made my wife feel real bad, she could really easy say, remember how you felt when Bob Rakish said you'll never succeed in marketing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember. Well, explain it to me. Tell me again. And I'd tell her again. And she'd say, honey, that's how you just made me feel yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, Shannon, tell me what I did. Tell me how I can fix it, because I know how that feels. See, that's an emotional word picture. That's
Yep.
Now I not only understand what she's saying, I actually feel what she's feeling. That's effective communication. And that's where most communication fails. Effective communication only happens when the other person understands what I'm saying and feels what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get into that I think I covered that in Richest Man, but I know it's in my book, Simple Steps to Impossible Dreams. And there's another one I wrote later called Mentored by a Millionaire. We get into teaching all those communication techniques. And they're all
So,
on Amazon.
Steve, let's come back for a second. How many books have you written now?
16.
16 books. Wow.
Yeah,
And you're in the process of writing another, did you say earlier?
always
Always.
writing at
So
least
when
one.
did you start writing books? What for you was the like where did that all come about? You're in business, you're
Yeah,
like
my daughter she was 9 months into her job. She had her master's degree. My oldest daughter, who's now 52, she had just gotten fired from her first job after 9 months. And I called her to console her and to give her some advice. And she literally said to me, Dad, what do you know about failure? You've got the Midas touch. Everything you've ever done has succeeded. And
Oh.
I thought, oh my Lord, my daughter, my own daughter. I was a millionaire by the time she was 5, so she doesn't realize all the failure that went before that.
Mm-hmm.
Failure is a big part of my teaching. Zig Ziglar, on my first book, the one that Donald Trump endorsed, Zig Ziglar said, Steve Scott's living proof that failure is an event, not a
Mm-hmm.
person.
I
So
love
I
that.
ended
Mm-hmm.
up writing a book to teach my kids how to creatively persist through failure and discouragement to achieve their dreams. Well, Steve Covey's agent was in my office pitching Covey for a project, and I went down, met with the people, and then I gave her the bad news I wasn't going to do an infomercial on it. And she said, "What's that on the corner of your desk?" And it was a manuscript. And I said, "Well, it's something I've written with for my kids to teach them how to succeed." And I told her the story about my daughter, and she said, "Well, I'm can I have it and read it on my way back to Dallas?" And I said, "Sure." Well, she called me from Dallas Airport as soon as she landed and said, "If you'll change the title, I can sell this book real quickly." She said, "This book is unbelievable." So I gave her the new title the next day. The new title was A Millionaire's Notebook: How Ordinary People Achieve Extraordinary Success. And and a few weeks later, she sold it to Simon and Schuster, who at the time was the biggest publisher in the world. And and that became a bestseller. And when that became a bestseller, Simon and Schuster wanted a second one. That became a bestseller. And then my third book, I went to a different publisher. Fourth book was first book Random House did, and they've been my publisher ever since. But my latest book, which came out in 2022, called The Joseph Principles, that was HarperCollins. And but no, my books are always, there's a purpose behind the book, or I wouldn't waste my time or my readers' time. And so what I'm Joseph Principles is the subtitle's better than the title, is turning adversity and turning adversity and heartache into miraculous living, and
Wow.
that
Mm-hmm.
focused on how to come into an intimate relationship, not just knowing about God, but how to come into an intimate relationship with Him. Uh, Jesus gave the only definition of eternal life in the entire Bible. He said, "And this is eternal life, that they might," in the Greek, he intimately know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. So that book, The Joseph Principles, talks about adversity, and it's about a lot of adversity and how we can turn that adversity, how we can let God turn it into a springboard into a deeper and more intimate relationship with Him. And that's where the real joy comes that sustains you. You know, Corrie ten Boom was Gary Smalley's mentor. Gary was my mentor. And my daughter and I last summer had the chance to visit the hiding place where she successfully, her and her family successfully saved the lives of more than 143 Jews, which today translates into over 8,000 Jews that are
Wow.
alive today because of Corrie ten Boom.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was just a glorious time for me and my
Yeah.
boy that's about to get married.
And so, Steve, coming back a little step, I'm really fascinated by this. I want to just quickly ask this question. What does the process for you of writing a book look like? Is it something that you go, I've got it, I know what I'm doing, and you just kind of power through it in a few days? Is it something that takes years? What does that process look like?
For me, because I have, number one, I'm a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've written over 1,000 television scripts before I wrote my first book. And so writing's the easiest thing I do. The hardest thing isn't the writing, it's the research.
Okay.
And typically I write from the viewpoint of my life, because what proves a principle, if it's right or wrong, or if it really works or doesn't? It's your own life. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to know a principle that worked for Bill Gates, but there's no way on God's green earth I can apply it to my life. I want to give my readers what I know worked for me, but
Mm-hmm.
it also worked in the 200 people that I studied that had achieved their impossible dreams. And we all did the same thing. We all used the same strategies. And we had to learn skill sets to apply those strategies. Like one strategy is become, Solomon said, A wise man trains his mouth and adds persuasiveness to his lips. So the question is, how do I become an effective and persuasive communicator? Because that's the strategy. Well, Gary Smalley gave me 4 communication techniques that changed everything. He gave them to me before I did my first commercial. And as a result of that, a result of those 4 techniques, I was able to generate billions of dollars of sales of our little company.
So this was one of my next questions. I'm actually fascinated by the infomercial process. Now, this is obviously an area that you are an absolute expert in, and I really truly believe that the process of a successful infomercial is very translatable to the way that we show up on social media to grow our business. So what would you say is the secret to a successful infomercial that works?
Well,
And is it
realize
translatable right now?
Yeah, no, it is translatable, but see, a lot of people don't start in the same amount of time that we would test. Um, in the infomercial industry, most companies says throw a lot of mud against the wall and look for something that sticks. That was never our. For me, it was find a breakthrough product. That was number one.
Yep.
A breakthrough is a product that can do something that nothing else in the world can do as effectively or efficiently or economically. One of those 3 or all 3. And that our first product that launched our company was a huge breakthrough. And almost every product after that, we had a product that you wouldn't have Under Armour right now if it wasn't for that product. It was called Where There's a Will, There's an A, and it taught kids how to get better grades. Well, one of those kids was a college student named Kevin Plank. And Kevin created Under Armour because of our seminar, Where There's a Will, There's an A. He would have never had it. So now that's a legacy business. Why? He's employed over the years tens of thousands of people. He has put clothing on millions of people because he was a senior at Maryland and his football team was forced to watch a 3-hour video seminar called Where There's a Will, There's an A, where the professor said, if you want to be an entrepreneur, don't wait till you graduate from college, become one in college. And their football coach said, you all have to think of a business you can run while you're here in college. And Kevin ended up coming up with what he later named Under Armour. So my book, I don't write a book just to write a book. I have a purpose, and the purpose is to turn the light on, not persuade. See, don't stop selling. Don't try to sell. You don't like being sold. I don't like when somebody tries to sell me. Just turn the light on. And if what you have is legitimate, truly legitimate, then turn the light on. And the people that want it will get it. And the people that aren't interested won't. Never worry about, don't chase after anybody. I've never chased after anybody. And except my wife, I chased after her really hard. And, but we turned the light on. Now, the problem is, honestly, there's a lot of Me Too ho-hum products out there.
Yep.
And you dress them up and you try to sell them, and nobody is interested because you're selling something that they could get in Walmart for a third the price in their mind. Now, maybe you're different than what they can get in Walmart. So you've got to turn the light on and show them what's different. Now, when my first product was an acne product, and the number 1 and number 2 sellers in America at the time cost $1.25 and $1.75. My product cost $9.50. And they were in stores and we had no stores. How do you bridge that gap? Well, you have to turn the light on so they could see what a breakthrough my product was over what was available in the stores. And guess what? Price didn't make any difference when they realized what a breakthrough it is. So that's kind of been, you start with a breakthrough, okay? Your goal isn't to sell, it's to turn the light on. So to do that, you've got to know everything about that product. You need to know about what competes. When a Total Gym, people said, that'll never work. My gosh, the highest impulse buy on TV was at the time for 3 payments of $49, and you're talking about a $600, $1,200, $1,800 product. Women aren't going to buy it. Well, they were wrong. They did. Why? Because I knew what the problem is with free weights. I know what the problem is with the machines we sit in that isolate our muscles, and we think that's good, but we're not exercising all the counterbalancing muscles. So yeah, it looks good, but we go to pick up a bag of groceries on the ground, and guess what? We throw our back out because we haven't exercised. So I always would find out what differentiates. Why is this product a breakthrough? I would meet the athletes that have been world class. I mean, we're talking baseball pitchers, Cy Young winners, most valuable player in a World Series. These guys are all using Total Gym. Why did they pick Total Gym? Why did their trainers have them on a Total Gym? And the answer was the counterbalancing muscles that you're having to establish, uh, uh, stabilize your core. If the sled's moving up and down and you're doing biceps, guess what? You've got to do all the counterbalancing muscles. So it's a better and safer workout. So we taught people that in that infomercial.
I love that. And I think that's really translatable as well to social media, and just a little reminder that sometimes it's the tiniest thing that you're not communicating. And there's a lot of assumptions made, I think, that people know. And so sharing that information, it reminds me of when I first started my very first sales job was a door-to-door sales job. I didn't know this at the time until I got it, but I literally had a duffel bag over my shoulder and I was told, here's this fake perfume, go and sell this to anyone that will buy it, and you make what you sell, you get commission off that, you sell it for whatever you want, but you got to pay us back this money at the end of the day. And I used to have to return it to the warehouse. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I know this is rubbish. I know that this perfume is fake. I know it was it mimicked all the different well-known brands. And I thought, how am I going to do this? And I thought the one question people are going to ask is it the same as the real thing? And I thought I can either be honest about it or I can lie. And I thought, well, let me work this out. What is the difference? And I worked out that there was one ingredient that was in the expensive brands that wasn't in the fake brands. And this ingredient was, and I can't even remember what it was now, but it was something that actually helped the fragrance bond to the skin. And so the fragrance itself was the same. This was the thing that, I guess you talk about research and understanding the difference. I thought, if I can go into somebody and I can say to them, the fragrance is just as good and the same, but it's not going to last as long as the expensive brand. But that's the difference between a $19 product and a $119 product. So you're going to use it a little bit faster, but you're going to get the same fragrance. And so I thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try going in and sharing with people, hey, you're going to get it on a budget. Here's the difference. No, it's not as good. Here is exactly why. And I would share about that ingredient with them and how it would bond it to the skin. And I came back every day with an empty you call it a car trunk. I call it a boot of a car. The boot of my car would be empty every day within a couple of hours, and everybody else is out for 5-6 hours and they're still coming back with product that they couldn't sell. And they asked me, how are you doing it? I said, I'm just telling the truth, but I'm also sharing.
You're turning the light on.
Sharing the difference. Yeah. And that was the point. What makes this product unique? And it was, the interesting thing was, they looked at me and they went, you're telling them why it's not as good. I said, yeah, but they also are trusting me because they know I'm telling the truth.
No, and see, you tell the truth. If I were doing that, because I've owned a fragrance company, I would say, it's the percentage of oil. The same oil will always cause the same fragrance, but the more you put in, the longer it lasts. An expensive perfume will have a much higher percentage of the oil than an inexpensive perfume. And what would why would you care? You don't care if it lasts all day. Carry a piece in your purse and use it halfway through the day. You're going to get the same fragrance, the same looks.
Yeah.
I love fragrance. In fact, the very first date I went out with my wife, clear back in 1990, we get in an elevator at a restaurant to go up to another floor. And I asked a lady, I said, wow, what are you wearing? And she said, oh, and she told me. And my wife, this is our first date, she says, why did you ask that? That's kind of forward, isn't it? I said, no, I own a fragrance company, and it was a good fragrance. I could tell what the top note was. The top note was vanilla, but it had something that went with vanilla. But now I'll look it up and see exactly how it was made, because it was a really good fragrance.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, you hit on fragrances. You don't have to be shy. People want to save money. I mean, another simple statement: would you rather take Creed? I love Creed's fragrances, but they typically cost me $200 or $300 a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather pay $200 or $300 or have the exact same fragrance for $28?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd take the 28.
Yeah.
Except I like the packaging of Creed, and it looks better when it's opened up
Yeah,
in a
and
box.
that's the thing. The difference then becomes: are you buying the brand or are you buying the product? And that
Yeah,
there's a lot to be said for building up
either
a
way.
brand as well.
Yeah, we've proven that women don't mind buying knockoffs. Most people can't afford real Gucci's, real
Mm-hmm.
designer stuff, and they're. What was so funny is some people to this day fight the knockoffs. They really fight the knockoffs. But if you saw the documentary on the house of, was it
The
Gucci? I
House of
think.
Gucci. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the one brother is all upset that we're being knocked off.
Yep.
And the other brother said, "No, that's advertising because it looks
Yes.
like ours. And these ladies are advertising how great our look is."
Yeah.
So, how do you look at the problem?
It's
See,
part of what made Gucci Gucci were the knockoffs because, of course,
yes,
everyone's suddenly seeing it. It's out there. People know that vast majority of people have got a knockoff, but then the question is it real or isn't it? And
yeah,
so, there was this pride that came with, I've bought the real thing, or "Hey, I don't need the real thing. I can still get a knockoff and still
yeah,
feel,
yeah,
amazing." But it actually made Gucci. And I think that's a really good reminder that, I just want to come back to something here that this reminds me of, and that is that there is no competition out there. And people get really funny about, oh, our competitor this, our competitor that, and how do we compete? And they get so focused on what the other business or the other product is doing. And it's not to say you don't do your research and you don't know what separates you,
yeah.
but
You got to differentiate. You got to know your value propositions.
yeah,
And some people prefer economy over quality or
yeah.
over prestige, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We created the Total Gym, and it was an expensive piece of equipment. And then all of a sudden, a company wanted to take it into retail, and they said, "We'll sell 5 Total Gyms for every one you sell on TV," and they did. But they have to get the product price down to what Costco and Walmart and Dick's and everybody would accept. So
Mm-hmm.
they were out there at Christmas time at this price. We're out on TV at this price,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay. Everything worked great. Um, but our first year in retail, we were knocked off by 8 companies, even counterfeited in Europe, where they had Chuck Norris and Christy Brinkley pictures on the boxes.
Yeah.
All of those companies went out of business. You know why? People would go into Dick's, for example, and they'd say, "Hey, I want that thing that Chuck advertised." Well, you know what? We sold out of those,
Mm.
but we got this one. It's exactly the same, but it's $50 left. Every company that knocked us off that Christmas, there were 8 of them, were out of business before the next Christmas because people said, "No, I trust Chuck.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
he says it's a good piece of equipment." And
Now,
in fact,
this brings up a really important point. This is something
but
that we repeat to our members. You guys have heard us say this on the podcast. I'm going to say it again right now because Steve's just brought this up. People are not buying the product, all right? They're not buying the company. They're not that is the end result, but initially they're buying you. They buy from people they like, know, and trust. And so when
Mhm.
you show up on social media, when you show up in a video and you share what you trust, what you believe, and you've built that trust up through showing up, people are more likely to do business with you. And it doesn't matter what your product is, it doesn't matter what your company is. If you build the trust, they'll buy what you're sharing because they trust what you do. So focus
Mhm.
on the connection first, the relationship first, and of course, product follows. It's not
Yes.
product first. People think I've got to lead with the product. I have to lead with the business. I mean, you knew when it comes to an infomercial, I need to put someone out there people trust in order for this to be successful.
Right.
And that was the key. And this is a really great example of that.
Yep. I had Michael Landon and John Ritter on my educational products, and people knew that Mike and John were both real family oriented. I had Cher on hair care because everybody
Mm-hmm.
knows if Cher doesn't like her hair that day, she grabs a wig. Hair is
Yep.
really important to her.
Mm-hmm.
And, that I always married the a credible celebrity to a product that would people would believe they were truly passionate about,
Yep.
and we always were.
Mm-hmm.
It was an amazing time of my life. I miss it sometimes, but I'm saving and reaching a lot more people, and I'm creating a legacy for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people. We had Dillamil with Richard Simmons. That was one that we had. We had so many. I'm looking at Jane Fonda right now. We had her
Well,
on a trip.
I think I think there's a lot to be learned from all of this, guys, and just a little reminder that you might be looking at some of this old school. I'm a big believer that success comes from marrying the old school wisdom with the new school technology. It's not about shifting out of that completely and going, things have changed. People haven't changed, okay? People are still the same, but the way we reach them has changed. And so take some of this wisdom. I think infomercials for me, I actually we're watching free to air TV right now. I'm a big fan of MasterChef. I don't know if you have this in the US. It's a
I
cooking
don't
show here in
watch much TV.
Right. I never watch TV, but I love this show and I love watching it's a reality TV show with some home cooks that come in and they've got to kind of fight for the top and I love it. But because I'm watching free to air TV, suddenly I am also now exposed to TV adverts which I never see and I am surprised to see that infomercials are making a comeback. And so
Yeah.
I'm watching these infomercials and I'm thinking to myself, what's the thing that's getting people that's working here? Something's got to be working because TV ads are still pretty expensive. And the answer is it's building the trust and it's solving a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's a lot of good products on TV. When we were the first, what I would call legitimate infomercial marketer. There
mhm,
were get rich quick schemes on TV at the time, and get rich quick schemes. Proverbs says, "Do if you want to get rich, your wealth will take up wings like an eagle and fly off into the heavens." Getting rich was never my focus, honestly.
mhm,
Achieving a particular goal.
yep,
And so I wanted to hit home runs, but I didn't think about the money that the home runs were going to generate. I know that sounds goofy, but it's because I was in business with a guy that I loved like my father. He was 52, I was 27 when we started American Telecast. And you know what? A smile from him saying, "Way to go, Steve." They didn't
mhm,
call they called me Woody because most of my work in life I was in Hollywood, and he'd say, "Way to go, Woody," and that was worth more than me. And then we got paid big checks when we hit home runs. We made millions of dollars each
yep,
partner,
I love
and
it.
but it wasn't the drip. I had to believe that the product was truly a breakthrough before I did.
Mhm,
I mean, we had millions of kids get better grades in 3 hours of teaching.
yep,
We became the study skills program for a number of universities because it was so impactful.
mhm,
Like I say, we have Under Armour today because of where there's a will, there's an A. That's a legacy. I would challenge people if they're with a company where they doubt the products, they don't see a difference between what we have and what's out in Costco, find a company, honestly, that has something that is of true value that people can't run to Costco and buy. And if your product does that, great. But if it
mhm,
doesn't do that, all you're forcing yourself to do is to become a high pressure salesperson because you've lost integrity.
yep,
You have to be honest with yourself to start out with.
yeah, awesome. Steve, I feel like we could talk for another day and a half. I know we actually could because we've done it before, but I want to ask the last final four questions really quickly
Okay.
because we do need to wrap this up. And then, you know what? Maybe we need to pull you back in to have a bit more of a
Anytime.
conversation because
You're so fun to be with anytime you want. Your husband's fun too. Bring him on.
he is fun. We actually, do you know, I've got to admit, he had some questions for you and he sent them through. He said, please ask these. He said, I've got more. And I went, no, I've already, I don't
Well,
have time.
you know
So
my number.
Yeah, we might have to get him in and do another interview and ask some more questions, because I know
Yeah,
he loves you guys as well. And look, I've got to ask these ones though. They're my favorite. I'm very keen to see what you've got to say. So the first one is this: what's your favorite book to add to our accelerator book list?
okay. The Gospel of John and the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew in
And
that
and
order.
in that order, I noticed you didn't say Mark.
Mark is good, but Luke goes into more fine detail, and I'm a
Right.
detail kind of guy.
Okay.
Matthew has the best recording of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew's chapter 5, 6,
Mhm.
and 7. The greatest sermon ever preached. Oh my gosh, you want to see life that counts, life that lasts forever. Read the Sermon on the Mount. But John, of course, was written by the disciple that had that close, intimate walk with Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, and that's what I want for my life.
Yep. Amazing. And if you could have a superpower, what would it be and why?
Uh, it would be to illuminate the majesty, the magnificent, the mercy, and the love that God has for us. If I had a power that I could get on a microphone and talk to every human being on earth, that's what I wish, because I see people's lives change when they come into intimacy with God.
I love that. That's amazing. And your favorite quote?
Oh, I have so many quotes that I love. I would have to say one that I love more than anything is I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. That a holy God could want to bring someone like me into relationship. I mean, I honestly, I don't know how anybody could ever say that could reach the place of my heart that Jesus Christ has given me with his call to repentance. The fact that he didn't come, that he came for those of us that know our sin. We know how far off from God's holiness we are. And I had a nudist one time that worked where I worked. She and her husband were nudists at a nudist colony. And she said, "Oh, Steve, I wish Jesus could be my friend like he's your friend." And I said, "Kathy, he can." And she said, "Oh, no, you don't know the terrible things I've done." And I said, "Kathy, you and I are exactly the people Christ came for. And Jesus Christ became her best friend and then the best friend of her husband. And I saw
Mhm.
their lives gloriously transformed over 40 years ago. And guess what he did the last days of his life? The last several years of his life in retirement, he was a janitor at a church. And
Wow.
this is a man who had no desire for God whatsoever,
Yep.
transformed by the love of God. See, that's
Yep.
now we're talking stuff that really gets me excited.
Well, final question, Steve. Last one. Definitely my favorite. Always is this: if you could go back in time and you could whisper something to your past self, what would that be?
Mm. Life is not about what you want, it's about what God wants.
Hmm.
So many times I've set aside God's will to pursue something very selfishly on my part. And when I've done that, I've hurt other people terribly, terribly. I mean, I've caused freeway pileups in the lives of people because of my self centeredness. And
Hmm.
I would tell myself, is this what God would have you to do? And I
Yeah.
would hope that I would start listening. I learned to listen way too late in life.
Hmm.
And, but that's what I would do. Pay
Yeah.
attention to God and less attention. It's not about follow your heart. That's such BS. Follow your heart. No, follow someone who knows where they're going.
Yep.
For me, that's Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He said, I'm the light of the world. He who follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life.
Yeah.
That's really what I want to
And,
do.
I just want to throw out there too, you and I obviously both Christians, we share the same beliefs. I know a lot of our listeners are not, and that I want
Right.
to start by saying that's totally okay. A lot of the things that you have been speaking about today are universal principles regardless of what you believe.
Yes.
And I just want to really encourage you, if you're listening to this, you're going, this isn't relevant for me. Yes, it is. Please listen in. And, I highly recommend, I want to read your other books. I'm going to admit I haven't read them all. I'm
Well,
loving.
after I write a book, I never go back and read it.
You're like me with my podcast. I never ever re-listen to anything I ever said before.
Yep.
It's gone. We're moving on.
I'd like to say something that you just said, though. That's one thing that's glorious about Proverbs. And richest man who ever lived
Yeah.
is in Russia. Okay. Proverbs reveals laws of life that are as solid as the laws that govern the physical universe. Whether you drop this, no matter what your beliefs are, you drop it and I drop it, it's going to fall to the ground. And that's the law of gravity. Well, Proverbs reveals laws that relate to communication, relationships, how to be fulfilled when everything around you is going crappy. And it was published as a business book, Richest Man, not as a religious book. Two different publishers, Religious and Random House published the one.
And I would 100% say if you're in business, get that book, read it, guys. The principles are universal. You will hear people from all sorts of religions quoting the things that are in Proverbs. So, look, I just want to thank you so much, Steve. This has been, it's such an honor for me. And from a selfish point of view, I personally have gained so much from this chat as I do with you. I just want to thank you for taking the time out and being with me, as well as our amazing listeners. It's been such an honor learning from you once again and hearing more about your journey. So thank you for pouring into us.
Thanks for inviting me, and I'm available anytime. I'm semi-retired.
Retired never. I do not believe you will ever retire. But also thank you, of course, to our amazing listeners for tuning in to this episode. It's been so great having you guys as well. And of course, if you've loved this and you're like, I need someone to hear what Steve's had to say today, share it with somebody. But it's been so great having you in here, and we'll see you all again next week. Thanks, guys, and bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.